Great report by the British Ministry of Defense about the pro-Russian Chechen soldiers infamous for their TikTok antics, which are being pressed onto the front line. The use of Chechen soldiers on the front line and to train Russian soldiers illustrates the desperation and resource strain within the Russian military. Pro-Russian Chechen forces have been fighting in Ukraine since 2014. Suffering initial heavy losses, Chechen units became largely relegated to conducting rear-area security operations. They became known as TikTok troops for their social media antics, rather than their fighting skills. Since the withdrawal of Wagner forces from the fight, these TikTok soldiers are being pressed back into frontline service. Around 42,000 Russian soldiers have been trained by a Chechnya military university since 2022, according to Chechnya's leadership. With only up to 10 days training likely, its effectiveness is in doubt. The use of Chechen TikTok soldiers on the front line and to train Russian soldiers illustrates the desperation and resource strain within the Russian military. In futile desperation, an elderly man tried to set fire to a military conscription office in St. Petersburg. Demonstrations of Russians who have no electricity continue. Locals say that power disruptions have been happening for over a month in Krasnodar, Russian media report. Some residential buildings are without electricity for 12 to 15 hours each day. Locals say that the power company doesn't accept calls, emergency services to not come. Thousands of Russian volunteers who joined the forces of the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics have found themselves on the wanted list for desertion, due to bureaucratic errors by the Russian Ministry of Defense after Russia annexed the DPR and LPR in 2022. The Direct Action Z Telegram channel reports on the plight now facing many ex-DPR-LPR volunteers, including some entire units still fighting on the front, following the decision of the Russian Ministry of Defense to incorporate the DPR-LPR People's Militias into the Russian armed forces. Thousands of Russian volunteers who left for the Donbass in 2022 were denounced in the People's Republics as having left their units without permission. Criminal cases are opened against them. They are put on the wanted list. The deserters have been fighting at the front for years, dying and losing their health, but for the state, they are only defendants in criminal cases and prosecutors' inspections. The channel explains the background. Even before the People's Republics joined Russia, volunteers from the mainland fought in the ranks of the People's Militia. Their legal status was questionable. Often they were not even properly registered in their units and did not receive the necessary allowances. But people came for ideological reasons, so they tolerated such twists and turns of bureaucracy. On 1 January 2023, the People's Militias became part of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, and Russian volunteers were retroactively registered as mobilized. Apparently, everyone who had ever fought in the People's Militias was mobilized. The mobilization was carried out by the Army Corps of the DNR and LPR People's Militias, which is absurd and illegal in itself, as mobilization orders are drawn up by military registration and enlistment offices at the place of registration. In some cases, people were registered as contract soldiers, but without signing a contract with the RF Ministry of Defense and taking an oath. As a result, the channel says, people who had been fighting for a long time in other units, who had gone home after serious injuries or at the end of their service, suddenly found out that the investigative bodies of the People's Republics had opened criminal cases against them for leaving their unit without permission. A soldier without an eye, with one hand that doesn't work, a soldier with shrapnel in his head. All of them have complaints from the authorities. A soldier who has served the specified period of time, resigned from his unit and is already in civilian life, is still registered as mobilized in full contradiction with the current legislation. Those who are unable to mount a competent defense soon receive suspended sentences and end up as stormtroopers, along with other Strafniks, punished soldiers. Some manage to organize a legal defense, and the cases against them are closed for lack of evidence of a crime. Direct Action Z notes that many of the accused volunteers are still serving in the Russian armed forces or the Red Hut mercenary force, despite simultaneously facing prosecution for desertion from the same. We also know about an entire unit that, together with its commander, was registered as deserters. Meanwhile, the unit is successfully fighting, holding its part of the front near Chasiv Yar. The channel describes the situation as a monstrous absurdity and arbitrariness, the only purpose of which is to create the appearance of legal grounds for the indefinite retention of volunteers who originally went for a limited period of service. It calls on Russian society, humanitarian workers, military officers, public opinion leaders to speak out publicly about Problem 500 and, together with us, try to influence the situation in order to close this issue immediately for all the People's Militia volunteers. President Zelensky, who said Putin does not simply want us destroyed. He does. He wants the return of the USSR under his control until the end of his days.
Для нас програш – це програти свою країну. Тобто це у всіх по-різному. Хтось каже, так а що важливіше для вас, територія або люди? Як можна так порівнювати? Все це про людей. Люди важливі. Але це не значить, що можна подарувати їм 30% нашої землі. По-перше, це наша земля. По-друге, а хто вам сказав, що вони не підуть далі? Вони йшли далі. Хто сказав, що спрацює заморожений конфлікт? Він вже був заморожений. Хто сказав, що Путін не хоче просто нас зруйнувати? Він хоче. Він просто хоче знову повернення Радянського Союзу під його керівництвом до кінця його днів. І в цьому весь зміст цієї людини. І якщо він пожертвував 500 тисяч людей своєї держави, хто сказав, що він не захоче ще вбити нас, мільйон? Якщо він не жаліє своїх 500 000, як можна повірити цій людині? Я вважаю, не можна вірити. Тому все повинно бути прораховано. Тому для мене програти, що це? Це ж не... Це не футбол. Це серйозна історія. Це не гра. Це не іграшки.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Every day. We had a guy last week, it's 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.